So nice to see that all of you have survived until now. I'll be reading a few poems. I tried to write something about spring, but it turns out that for me, writing about spring is like writing about love, and it's just really hard to write about topics like this. And so I thought about the 13 ways of looking at a blackbird, and so I wrote 5 ways of looking at spring. 1. He's an old man with gray hair, and when I blow the seeds of his dandelions, I summon his awakening. 2. Everyone is so busy looking at flowers, the grass stands green with envy. 3. Spring is renewal, revival, rebirth, reusing the cliché of spring. 4. The ground lay on its back in perpetual stare, watching the tree lean on the sky, wondering how sunlight will scatter the day. 5. She wears her breasts shamelessly on the street, feeding the hungry without noticing the poets on the corners with their mouths open. This I wrote, if I didn't mention this, but many of us from Tel Aviv are part of the creative writing workshop that Dara Barnat instructs, and this I wrote as part of one of the exercises, and it's about poetry. I want to eat poetry for breakfast every morning at 6, spread some jam on its face, let my knife slide smoothly on its crust while picking up every piece from the empty plate. Poetry, you tire me, you disquiet me, you get on my nerves, you slap me in the face, you make me beg for a language I do not possess. You are too much, too soon, too far, I am too absorbed in you. This piece I wrote as a reaction, I guess, or a response to the recent Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip, and it's called 1,000 Pietas on the Mediterranean. I am almost as voiceless as these women holding their dead lovers' bodies, and the burden of flesh, you can see the muscles straining to bear the weight. For a moment, they look serene, accepting, closing their eyes, face, and left hand facing upwards towards a God you and I do not know. We cannot find peace in a premonition fulfilled. We try to learn the language of the divine, but we are 1,000 virgins never knowing the language of desire. What changes the body is as immutable as the tears, as 1,000 Pietas on the Mediterranean calling in vain for their loved ones. And for my last piece, I would like to invite Danny Cohen again, who composed a wonderful melody for one of my poems called Down the Rabbit Hole, and I think that this is as springy as it gets, and it's called Down the Rabbit Hole. Some say Alice never made it out. She crawled back relentlessly, each time looking for another path, each time meeting seductive cats and playful trees. Some girls are bored sitting on riverbanks. They prefer to chase white rabbits. Some girls fly like ravens, like writing desks. Some girls drink from bare bottles with no labels saying, "Drink me." Some girls cry and cry and cry until they float in their own ocean. Some girls like to fetch gloves for their rabbits, willing to run up and down the stairs, panting till he's pleased. Some girls grow so big and big and big, their houses cannot contain them. Some girls admit they have an identity crisis. Some girls know we're all mad out here. Some girls tell caterpillars that 3 inches is a wretched height. Some girls eat mushrooms. Some girls eat cakes that ask to be eaten. Some girls insist on attending stupid tea parties. Some girls love red roses. Some girls get their heads chopped off by playing cards. And some girls wonder if they are as they were before the dream. Thank you. Thank you, Danny, as well. And I would like to invite our last reader for the day who has survived the heat, all the commotions, Professor Karen Alkalay-Gut, who was born in London on the last night of the Blitz. Karen Alkalay-Gut grew up in Rochester, New York, completing a PhD in 1975 at the University of Rochester. Since 1972, she's been in Israel raising a family, teaching poetry at Tel Aviv University, writing and living. She chairs the Israeli Association of Writers in English, is vice president of the Federation of Writers Union in Israel. She's published over 20 books of poetry and is currently part of 2 unique, very unique, I might add, musical groups called Thin Lips and Panic Ensemble. And if you haven't seen them yet, run. Please welcome Karen.
I'm going to read 20 poems. No. Okay. I haven't decided yet. Okay. Here we go. Spring. Don't let April fool you. It isn't only in the buds that your hope is renewed, but the aromas, the taste in the air, entering your flesh in ways it wasn't awake to know. Close your eyes. Feel the sun play into your pores, recalling how cold you were for so long, how much you depend on the renewal of the world for survival. Don't let April fool you. It's not just little truths that poets turn to for lifting their spirits, and it's not only the cruelest months that wake you to your integration with the trees, the snails, the details all around. Think of the months before, the worn light graying your sight from the thought of revival. Maybe it was always there, that hope, and when it comes, you call it April. Don't let it fool you. It's here whenever you have the nerve to remember it. I have this series of poems about Moses and Miriam and all that, but I'm just going to read you one. Too much. This is called...
How do you spell that?
Spit it out, Moses, I tell him impatiently. Give me the whole word at once. It isn't stuttering, you know, he says, suddenly clearly. Every letter could go on its own, many different ways. I have to be so careful not to say something that those Israelites will interpret in some extreme direction. That's why I needed to get the laws etched out for them in stone. All right, I think I'm going to skip with Miriam and stuff. There's one poem I would like to read, but it doesn't fit the place. Okay, it's my last poem. It's called To a Toilet in the Museum of Modern Art. Oh my, it was so kind of you to flush just as I entered the booth, as if you'd been expecting me and knew how I love a fresh bowl. Here I've been examining Picasso all afternoon and suddenly understood he was just looking at the world the way it was, not inventing some gimmick, wanting to converse with the viewer as much as the canvas and his subject. And now I see the interaction between you and me.